It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
It's been kind of a meme now, right? Like it's
Yeah.
Immaculate. We teased it, I think, very early in season 2, and
We did.
we kept talking about how we're gonna cover it, and now we're finally here.
Yeah.
Right before the end of season 2.
So we did keep our promise. We are covering it in season 2.
Yeah.
Just not as early as everybody thought.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So Immaculate 2024, directed by I believe Michael Mohan, if that's how you pronounce the name.
Mm-hmm.
Release date was March 22nd, 2024. So we're a little behind on this, and
We are.
we wanted to cover it, but there was so much that came out earlier in the year. Like also Imaginary Zoo was another movie that came out around this time, and
Yep.
it was a bit tough. But we're here with Immaculate. Also, starring in this is Sydney Sweeney, Vendetta Boccoli, and Alvaro Morte. So I'm just gonna go out and say it. It's a nun movie that happened to come out around the time that First Omen came out.
Yeah. I think the two of them were almost like competing with one another, right? If I'm not wrong.
Close to, yeah. Like I don't know exactly the full-on dates of it, but when First Omen came out, but yeah, they were pretty much around each other. I remember seeing them like in the theaters, like the posters for each film.
Yeah.
So-
And I think I even made the joke at one point of like, like, look, it's another nun movie, and there's two of them. And at one point, I even thought they were the same film, just like different trailers. But when I paid attention, I realized no, they're different.
To quote my friend Mark from the KRW network, it's the First Omen, but not done as well. I don't know if I fully agree with that though. I think I get his point of view on that, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get too much of the First Omen vibes, and that's coming out of us hearing that. So our mind is already expecting it to be like First Omen, and I still came out thinking like, okay, it's not really First Omen. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Everybody also said it's a lot like First Omen from whenever I was like looking up the general idea of the film. At the same time, though, I had heard more praise about Immaculate than I had the First Omen, so I won't say I had really high expectations, because this year it seems anytime I have high expectations of films, they like, or anything in general, it just seems to fall flat.
Yeah.
But I did try and walk into the film with an open mind. Were there a lot of parallels? Yes. Like a girl committing suicide, spoiler warning, or like a nun getting pregnant, quote unquote, miraculously. The type of spawn that they end up giving birth to. So a lot of parallels, but one can also argue that each of them told their story in a very unique way.
Yeah.
They just had quote unquote canon events, not to steal a line from like the Spider-Verse. But yeah.
So April 5th was the release date for First Omen, so you were actually kind of right on the money with that one. They
Nice.
probably,
I didn't even look at that.
they probably did compete with each other. They were competing with each other, excuse me. So very interesting. But I'm going to go out and say it. As much as I'll praise the fact that it was not the First Omen, I still didn't like the movie that much. I think it might just be that I'm not the biggest fan of Sydney Sweeney yet as an actress. I know she's in, or they are in Euphoria. I also know they're in Madam Web as well, starring in that as well. But I'm not, again, like fully a huge fan yet. So I think the acting is kind of like what threw me off a little bit. Not to say it was bad. It's just
A bit of surprise.
yeah, because so. Yeah, Immaculate, I'll go ahead and throw it over to you and let you start it off and take it away.
I mean, with this film, it starts off pretty strong. It's a very interesting beginning, I will say. kind of classic where you see a nun on the ground praying. She shifts this painting over to the side, but we don't really see what she does. Shifts it back. Seems to be like praying, asking for forgiveness, asking for protection. All in Italian, by the way. And she gets up, goes to the room right next door, opens a drawer, and you find a set of keys, and these look like very old, like Victorian keys. She grabs it, makes a bunch of fucking noise. In the beginning, I think I even looked to you and I said, like, she's gonna, the old bitch, like, she's essentially just faking being asleep at this point because this girl's making way too much noise. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe, like, she really was tired and winded and slept through all the ruckus. But this girl grabs her bags.
Her name was Sister Mary.
Sister Mary? So I guess Sister Mary.
Very fitting, I guess.
Yeah. She grabs her bag once she has her keys and makes a run for it. And she's like panting, panicking, looking behind her, freaking out. Lights start shutting on. And when the lights start turning on, like, she starts to freak out more. She finally makes it to the gate. And when she's there, she's, again, panicking, trying to figure out which key goes into the right keyhole. And all of a sudden, the camera, like, pans to her front, also showing what's behind her. Yeah. And you see 4 hooded and, like, fully cloaked people walking towards her. They almost look like shadows. And when she sees them, she starts to freak out more. She starts to panic more. So she gets, I think, one of the locks open, but she doesn't get the second one done, which is what forces her to kind of try and weasel her way out of the gates. She does that, but right before she makes it, one of the figures ends up grabbing her by the ankle, pulling her back, and breaking her leg through the gated doors. The scene cuts, and you hear a match light. And then, once again, you're shown Sister Mary's face, but this time she's laying on her back, very, like, Kill Bill-esque. But she's panicking, and the coffin's actually a whole lot smaller. And you start seeing, like, dust coming down within the light of the single match. Yeah. She's panicking. She starts screaming for help, begging and pleading to be let go. And more and more and more dirt seems to be falling because you can hear it and you can see more dust falling down into the coffin itself. The screams kind of bleed into the opening credit, which I thought was a nice little, like, tweak, if you will. It's a pretty cool title card. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was really interesting and captivated my attention in the beginning for sure. I think the one thing that you told me that was really interesting that I didn't know was that a lot of priests and, like, nuns or people who are very religious, when they kind of fall off the rail or betray their faith, they actually get buried alive. I thought this was just, like, cruel and unusual punishment, but I guess it follows a certain faith, if you will.
In the very old days. Like, at least there's stories about it. I don't think they've ever been fully confirmed. I mean, but a lot of people seem to believe it. So.
Yeah, so, like, I was not brought up on that side of religion. My parents are Middle Eastern, and I'm sure you guys can put 2 and 2 together as to what kind of religion they followed. So hearing stories like that wasn't something that I was accustomed to, and I didn't know that that was, like, a pre-notion that you could have of the olden days. Now,
I mean, I didn't find it out through my religion either. I found it out through just, like, reading something like a couple years ago.
I figured, like, it would be common-ish knowledge. Not, like, common knowledge, but common enough.
Oh, like I said, it's not confirmed. It's, like, just stories you would see, like, on Reddit and stuff, which can you trust Reddit? Who knows?
True. But other than that, the screaming is, like, kind of done. Title cards play out, and then all of a sudden, the scene cuts to a girl... a suitcase, actually. Suitcase being open with a bunch of things inside it. And
making it through customs.
One of the officers through customs seems to be, like, fiddling around with her stuff. And, of course, like, them trying to figure out why she's a nun. Because, like, the main girl, her name's Cecilia. She's very pretty. Like, a very standard girl next door type of pretty, like, blue eyes, blonde hair.
She's the one who's played by Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah, so if you know her, you know how she looks like. And these custom officers make, like, side little remarks about, like, what a waste it is that she's becoming a nun so young. And, like, I just felt uncomfortable. And you could tell she could also feel uncomfortable. And they were, like, really trying to inquire about how she even made it to Italy without paying for her ticket. So it is what it is, but once like all that's done, she gets picked up from the airport. But before the whole conversation with the custom guards goes, she says that she actually needs to go and take her vows, saying that she can't really have this whole like investigation or whatever take too long.
Yeah.
Finally makes it out. Meets out with one of the members of the church who like call her by name, tell her to come and sit down into the car. She makes her way through Italy, and we're taken through the city and into the countryside to where we finally see the convent. And this convent's beautiful.
Yeah.
Cecilia's impressed. I think one of the nuns, who we later on learn the name of, her name's Isabel, is explaining to her the history behind it. I think the convent was like built in 1604 or like 1684.
So, yeah.
One of the two.
By the way, Isabel, that's just a rite of passage. You watch a horror movie with nuns, you're going to hear the name Isabel.
Yeah. Which, by the way, MJ bringing that up, it sparked my curiosity and I really looked into it. I didn't know that the name Isabel literally meant pledge to God.
Yeah.
Which I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with why you see so many Isabels in like nun movies or movies that require a lot of like religion to play a part into it. But Isabel's kind of showing her around, and I think she's even telling her how like this place is meant for helping older sisters pass on and like essentially making their last days the most pleasurable.
Yeah.
That's like the main mission of this convent, and Isabel seems to be like really liking the choice that she made, at least in the beginning.
Isabel also tells Cecilia right before it's time for dinner, I believe, that go ahead and, like, if you want, give up now. Like, God will forgive you in due time.
Yeah.
You haven't taken your vows yet. And Cecilia says, no, I think God's prepared me for what I need to do here.
Yeah.
Which is interesting line for what happens throughout the film. So.
I know. Yeah. That, I feel like, is a very iconic line. I'll let you go ahead and, like, continue as far as, like, the ceremony and then things like that goes.
So after that whole interesting line with Isabel happens, and you can tell Isabel is not really cool with Cecilia being here. Like,
no.
She doesn't really fuck with her.
No.
And you don't really understand why until later, which we'll get into. But
we have a funny moment where, like, Isabel's showing Cecilia throughout the convent, and, like, Cecilia seems to, like, almost zone into or zone out in a room of, like, a bunch of nuns singing different, like, harmonies.
Yeah.
And I know it was supposed to be a comedic moment, and I'm sure if we were in the theaters, we would have heard a few chuckles, but Isabel, like, stoic, cold, walks straight to Cecilia without, like, just straight profile view and just goes,
yeah.
Cecilia, like, snaps out of it, apologizes profusely, and then starts following her again to get the rest of the tour.
But once that whole interaction happens, I believe we go straight into the ceremony. I can't remember anything else happens in between there.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. If anything, like, maybe Cecilia put down her bag in her room, but then the scene cuts to her, like, kneeling.
It's like the preparations before the vows, right? Like there's people walking around the church or in the room.
Putting her belt on, putting on the special robes.
We then see, I assume, is the cardinal, right?
The cardinal, yeah.
And then that main priest.
So.
Yeah, cardinal, and then the main priest that we see constantly throughout the film.
Yeah.
The one portrayed by Alvaro Morte. And we get this interesting scene
I think his name is Tedeschi.
Tedeschi?
I think.
But we get this interesting scene where essentially she has to take her vows. She kneels. And everyone in that room, for them, I don't know if this is a common thing or not, but they all look scared.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you caught that or not.
Mm-hmm.
So all the young women who are doing their vows, they all look scared as fuck. And then you have the cardinal pull up, and he wants, them to each kiss his ring. And I remember you got up and went ill and walked to the kitchen and then came back.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting. Is that not supposed to happen, or is that?
I think it's supposed to happen, but the way that, like, the cardinal did it, and then how the other nuns in line turned to her to look at her, and they gave her, like, a weird look too. It kind of made me feel like as if Cecilia really wasn't meant to kiss that ring. But she did.
Yeah. But either way, that happens, and then they all kind of go to a party, which you pointed out, or the dinner after that, and the table shaped like a cross, which I thought was pretty
fucking hilarious. Once we get to the whole dinner scene, I think Cecilia steps away with Tedeschi, Chi, I guess is his name.
I'm just refer to him as the priest.
Whatever it is, the priest. He essentially like dives into his reason as to why he got close to God and why he even turned to God, which he was like a biology major. And I think he even says it in a way where like as if he's mocking himself, because I know biologists or people who study biology are supposed to put their faith aside, and a lot of them are stereotyped to be atheists, if you will.
Yeah.
But like ultimately he just kind of like says, once I reached a point and realized that there is no other explanation but God, I turned to him, and so on. And that's how he found his faith. Cecilia then opens up about how she really turned to Christianity and like really started believing in God the way that she does now, and why she was willing to take her vows so young. And it's because of a whole experience that she had when she was 12. I guess she lived somewhere in the Midwest, but for whatever reason, her parents would always let her walk onto a lake or to a river, some form of body of water that would freeze over. And every year she would put her hands on the ice and feel her hands freeze over.
Mind you, she was like 12 or 13 when this happened, so.
Yeah, so like, she's relatively young. At that time, and then she's still relatively young in current day, or at least that's how she's portrayed to be. And I think you brought this up, and this is also something that my parents told me. Now, I don't know if this is just something that both your parents and my parents took preparation for, or maybe it's not common knowledge, but growing up, I was told that you're really not supposed to walk on any body of water that's frozen, because no matter how solid the ground looks, it's really not. You can one misstep and it'll cause the entire thing to crack. So I guess that kind of plays into the part of to why Cecilia ends up really having her faith. After about 12 years of doing it consistently and nothing happening, this is when the one time she keeps her hands on the ice, it cracks, and she even tells the priest that, I don't even remember what happens next. All I remember is like painful cold, and then them saying that I was like presumably dead or declared dead for about 7 minutes, which I thought the number 7 was a pretty interesting like thing to bring up. But she essentially just felt like once she was brought back after being dead for 7 minutes, there had to have been a reason behind it. And she's still searching for that reason, but a reason nonetheless.
I thought it was a little goofy. I'm not going to hold you.
Yeah.
I think that getting like shot in a drive-by when you're just at the wrong place at the wrong time and you didn't do nothing, sure, or anything else other than that. But you knowingly doing something that's fucking stupid for years, and then you fall in on the 1 year and then come back, oh yeah, I must have been brought back for a reason. It's just like, I feel like they could have written that something else happened to her other than that. But
yeah.
Especially when she's already 12 or 13, because at that point you should have some
form of faith?
Just some sort of fucking common sense not to do that. But maybe I'm being too harsh on the movie, but
I didn't feel that strongly about it, but pop off.
I just feel like that like backstory on this whole of her having faith is just kind of fucking stupid. But anyways.
Apparently being declared dead for a significant amount of time makes you either experience God or believe in God, one of the two, or not believe in him.
I mean, that makes sense. I just feel like maybe getting to that point of her being dead for a little bit before being brought back.
They could have used a different story. You're not wrong. For sure. But
maybe I'll mention that. Maybe there's some symbolic thing of fire and ice on some Game of Thrones shit. I don't know.
I mean, it's biblical, so. Anyway.
But after that, she ends up... I think someone also makes a joke about drinking too much of Jesus Christ's blood, right?
That's a little ahead.
A little ahead, okay. Yeah. But I guess we kind of understand the whole her drinking a lot there, which we find out what that probably led to later. But... and we see that she's drinking a lot there. I think even the priest makes like a little funny like nod to that. We then get to, we cut to a different scene where she is, I guess, stepping away from the bathroom.
So she was at the feast. She excuses herself after telling her story to the priest, and then she goes into the bathroom. I think the priest mentions that he has had 2 glasses of wine, but we don't hear how many Cecilia has had. Yeah. So we don't really know what number she's on. I'm assuming probably just starting to, but like number 2. So I think whenever she's in the bathroom, that's when she starts hearing the whispers, and like weird chanting, and then steps away and starts following the whispering noises. So as she's following the whispering and like the speech patterns, she's like kind of weaseling her way throughout the convent. And we come to find out that this place is actually known to have what they call a holy nail, claiming that it was from the cross of Christ himself, which I thought was a little weird. She's shown this nail by, I think, Mother Superior or one of the mothers.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a very interesting detail, so I don't know if you want to like think about it this way. Before Cecilia is met with the Mother Superior.
The Mother Superior, she actually like saw somebody like on the floor crying, right? Yeah.
She saw somebody on the floor, and I thought it was like nun in regular robes in the beginning, but
it looked like those shadow figures from earlier.
Kind of. Well, I didn't make the connection that way because I think the shadow figures were just shown to be like literal thumbs just walking through. But with this one, this figure like laying down, because of the way that this figure was laying down, literally like a cross, made me think that this person is wearing like nun robes. But Cecilia makes her turn her face, like for the first time as an audience member, we come to hear Cecilia speak in Italian, like actually practice her Italian.
Yeah.
And when the nun turns, we find out it's not a nun. It's somebody who has a cloak on, and their face is covered in like this red. And then that's when the Mother Superior jumps in, and Cecilia jumps up. The figure then turns their face back into the ground and keeps praying. And the Mother Superior is talking about this holy nail.
Yeah.
And the Mother Superior takes the nail out of the glass case that it has and hands it over to Cecilia. But before she hands it off, the camera focuses on their hands. The Mother Superior has like wrappings or almost like a glove on her hands while Cecilia is bare.
Yeah.
So in my eyes, I'm thinking the nail's drugged. And turns out I'm on the right track because you start to see Cecilia like almost panic, look between the figure of Christ, the figure or the person or the nun on the floor, and then the Mother Superior and the crosses that are all around, and then she finally passes out and falls to the ground.
Oh, the nail was drugged.
I'm pretty sure that was the case.
I thought it was the wine that the priest had given her was drugged.
The wine might have had some adverse effect, but I'm pretty sure the nail had it. In my opinion, I feel like the camera focusing on the fact that Mother Superior had like wrappings on her hand and Cecilia didn't. That kind of integrated in my brain that it had something on there.
No, I mean, I think yours makes more sense because that would have had to have been like some like drug that just didn't hit that quick. But usually drugs that don't hit that quick, they're not going to make you knock out immediately. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so I think you're more on the right track there. I just thought him making that comment about how many glasses he had was supposed to give us insight that he did something to her drink. But
maybe. It could have been a mix of both, like a small little dosage here with the wine, and then whenever she went to touch the nail, that's whenever everything kind of went into fast motion, or if it was the catalyst.
That's why I think yours makes the most sense, because like she fell quick.
Yeah.
But if it was like a pill that's hitting you over time, it wouldn't make you fall that quick. Yeah, you naturally kind of like knock out.
They almost made it perceive in the beginning, and sorry to cut you off, like almost it was a panic attack. Because it's not like she was starting to see things melt into each other. No, you saw the images change and like shift very quickly.
Right. And then, of course, that leads to her having a lot of nightmares and stuff like that, a lot of hooded figures. We get, like, scenes of, like, flashes, very American horror story-esque, you know, which I thought was pretty dope. And it's, like, of the hooded figures, of, like, a priest that, or not a priest, maybe a nun. Also one of, like, a father that she's talking to, where it seemed like the room was, like, stretching out.
Elongating, and, like, he's melting into the darkness. Like, it's just one thing after the other. Like, well, whenever she's talking to the priest, that's whenever she gets pulled through the wall and it's laid down on the bed, and then you have not the 4, the 5 figures surrounding her.
Yeah.
And the cloaks. And then that's whenever it snaps too, and she has all those other nightmares. Once, I don't know, like, things just kind of seem to take a darker turn after that moment, and you and I both know why, and it's heavily implied as to why. But essentially, Cecilia seems to get sick out of nowhere while talking to Gwen, because right before all this,
Gwen was like the little shining star throughout this whole little period that gets darker and darker. Yeah, she's the comedic one.
She was a bright light. Like, she had a cute little wit to her. Cecilia also like learns about Gwen's origin story, which she doesn't say it in words, but it's heavily implied that she was trying to figure out a way to survive, and she poured herself out, didn't really have anything, and turned to the sisterhood because they had food and clothing and housing for free, and didn't really need to work for it. So Cecilia makes the comment of like, oh, well, then you don't really believe in God. And Gwen was like, no, I do. Only a man would make this world so cruel. And they share a little smile, a little laugh, but that's when Cecilia like breaks off. And mind you, they're in a tub together, and like ends up yakking. But before all this, Cecilia's being shown the life of the convent. It's very much like A, B, C, D, like once you do one thing, you do another, and then you end your day like this, and then you go to bed and you wake up and you do something new, and then eventually you build a schedule for yourself. But once Cecilia gets sick, that's whenever things get a little weird, because a bird suddenly runs itself into the window and like kills itself while Cecilia's looking out, and she just seems to not be getting better. She eventually visits the doctor, and then after a few examinations, she's suddenly set into a room where she's asked a bunch of different questions about her vows.
Basically wanted to know how she fucked.
Essentially, yeah. Like they started it broad, but we all knew where it was going, and I'm sure Cecilia did too, but she kept it to herself, and you could tell that she was getting aggravated and irritated in a way and like almost genuinely upset. But it was weird because like the way that they were asking her questions, it was almost like they were interrogating her, and they kept emphasizing on the facts and like really trying to figure out whether or not she was lying about if she's still a virgin. But eventually, and there's this like weird segment of like a few different scenes being cut together, and it's like both of like the present, the past, and the future, but all within like an hour or two time span, if you will.
It's essentially her being told she's pregnant, and then her getting the
actual results.
Of doing the thing done.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, they mentioned straight up, legitimately, that like her hymen was never touched. So
that was never broken.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Especially with them like putting the rod in her, the camera in her later, because that's like, sure that hurt. So poor girl.
Yeah. I mean, once the doctors finally give the diagnosis and she's brought forth to the rest of the nuns, she almost is placed in like this weird ceremonial robes, and like her hairstyle and like her crown mimics the St. Mary's, which we come to find out she's being called the next Virgin Mary.
Yeah. The one thing I didn't like about this movie once this part happened, and even before, was there's a lot of vomiting. Mm-hmm. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I can watch Terrifier, Art the Clown just hack up somebody over and over, but if I watch someone throw up, it grosses me out. Like it's...
Speaking of throwing up, suddenly the movie cuts to a title card that says second trimester, and Cecilia is toppling over into like a bathroom or a bidet, throwing up again. But this time when she's done, she ends up spitting out one of her teeth.
Which I don't think is supposed to happen during her pregnancy.
No. No. Going, and like as time passes, and I think that's the only time skip that we really have, you come to see the convent treat Cecilia in a very interesting way. They all stand up when she walks into a room. She's just kind of walking around doing her own thing for most of the part whenever she's within the convent.
All smiling at her.
Everybody smiling at her. Everybody calling her the savior. Everybody like sending up all kinds of prayers anytime that she crosses their paths. The only person who doesn't seem to be buying this is Gwen. And she's even making like cute little smart remarks, like being the classic Gwen that she is. Or at least that's what Cecilia seems to call her.
After the, I guess, lunch scene, it cuts to Cecilia being in the tub, and like always, a sudden pair of hands come down on her. Now, we see that this entity or this person is just constantly pushing her down. She's struggling, she's freaking out, and then you can tell that it's Isabel. Now, Isabel, who we mentioned earlier, didn't already like Cecilia, but now we've got a little interesting tidbit of information here. As she's drowning her, she mentions that it shouldn't be her. And then a whole bunch of people come in, they break it up, and as they're pulling her away, she's almost crying in agony, it seems, Isabel. And she's even yelling even louder this time. It shouldn't not be her. It shouldn't be you. It shouldn't be me.
It should be me.
It should be me. Try me again. This and that. And that right away freaks out Cecilia.
Yep.
And she has to go to the doctor. Of course, they're examining her to make sure nothing happened to the baby because she was basically assaulted. and everyone says everything's cool. But again, what's ringing in Cecilia's head is, what did she mean by it should have been me?
Yeah.
And then it shouldn't have been me. So,
yeah. I think Cecilia even makes a note that says, like, hey, we're all focused on the baby's health, but what about my health? Like, I was being held down, I was being choked out, but they kind of seem to brush that off and really focus on the baby's health. And then that's when Cecilia really says, well, and then that's when she kind of hyper-focuses on what Isabel said.
yeah. Is this also when she keeps mentioning, let's go to the hospital?
She wants to go to a proper hospital. I think it's like hinted that she's either 5 or 6 months pregnant. Her stomach's jutting out, so I can't say 4, probably 5 or 6. So she still hasn't seen like a proper doctor. She's only been seeing the doctor who's at the convent, who, like she says herself, only takes care of old women.
Yeah. I think at this point, that's where the scene cuts. I think like maybe a day or so has passed.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cecilia is walking and a woman commits suicide. And now this is what Marvel was talking about earlier. And it, of course, is Isabel. Now, what was interesting about this scene is that when everyone's freaking out and they turn Isabel over, her eyes are almost like untouched. Like there's no blood on them. They haven't burst. And she's looking straight at Cecilia. Very interesting shot there.
She almost has this like panic attack, and then during the whole ceremony of like burying Isabel, you have Gwen and Cecilia kind of chatting and talking about how like what's been going on as of late is like a little crazy, especially ever since she's been declared pregnant. Gwen seems to really be questioning things, saying that things aren't really adding up. Like, this doesn't really seem like the work of God. Like, they all need to open their eyes. We need to open our eyes. We need to figure out a way to get out of here. Like, something doesn't feel right. And she even goes as far as to scream out to the rest of the crowd whenever the priest Tedeschi, I guess is whatever his name is, stops the two of them from talking and says, like, are you guys fucking stupid? Like, are we really gonna act like nothing really happened? And she just gets louder and louder, and that's when Tedeschi, or the priest, ends up pulling her away along with a few other people, and the ceremony continues. Right
in front of everyone, too. This isn't like this ain't like in the middle of the night. It's broad daylight. Literally, everyone just watches as she gets pulled away, and I don't think anyone really does anything about it.
No, they all watch, because I mean, and I've heard that, you know, Christian schools, and especially like Catholic schools and nun schools, if you will, I don't really know what they're called, are very strict whenever it comes to disciplining, and are pretty harsh whenever it comes to disciplining. So that's probably one of the reasons why nobody really did anything, including Cecilia. So it makes sense, but I don't know. Once the scene cuts, all of a sudden you have Cecilia in her bedroom, and she eventually stumbles across a written message that's behind a Virgin Mary painting, ironic of all things. But she doesn't like stumble across it all innocently. No. She's curled up in a ball on her bed, and the camera panels to like a profile view of her like curled up as best as she can be with having like a 5 or 6 month old baby in her stomach. And all of a sudden, one of the ropes that are holding onto the painting of Queen Mary snaps. She notices the scribe and turns to the Bible verse that's written on the wall. And when she opens up the book, she finds the line, and it literally says, "For Satan himself often masquerades as an angel of light." And this is when Cecilia knows that what's going on around her, what she's experiencing, is really not supposed to be happening. It's not natural.
This is not the place to be.
Yeah. She immediately shoots up, starts looking for Gwen, which we've come to find out that they actually roomed right next to each other. She can't find her. And
which makes sense as to why they were close friends.
Yeah.
At least close as you can get for how long she was there.
It's actually, exactly. Sorry. It's been a long day. Talking is very hard. Anyway.
We get it. She does a customer service job, so it's... Or not really customer service, but you deal with customers.
Yeah, and I have to talk to a lot of people all the time. So it just fucking sucks. But anyway, I digress. So when she's looking for Gwen, she is like stumbling across the convent. She finds her way to the interrogation room, is what I like to call it, where like all the different people were questioning her about her vows. And she actually jigs open the drawer that she saw the Mother Superior and the rest of the people handling a personal file of her have. This file has information about her. I think it even already has information about like her being dead for like 7 minutes and so on and so forth, which supposed to be confidential information, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Once she kind of like collects herself and calms herself down, she starts hearing screams, and she starts following them. As she's following them, she's making it through these different hallways, different pathways, and then comes to like a very heavy set of doors that have like a little peek hole in them, and she peeks through it. And lo and behold, this is where the camera focuses on Gwen being strapped up to a chair. You see these like cloaked figures again in the same room. Before you fully see Gwen, you hear all the begging, the pleading, the please don't do this, stop, like I promise I won't do anything. And then that's when we truly find out it's Gwen, because the voice really does sound like her. The figure then grabs one of these like weird plier tools, pulls out her tongue, grabs a knife, and slices Gwen's tongue off. Which is just insane. I haven't seen anything like that in the horror film.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like this film did a good job of like really portraying, I don't want to call it gore, but like the anatomy of things, if you will.
It's probably gore in the most realistic way possible. I think. Like
versus like it being over exaggerated.
I feel like in Terrifier, like if Art pulled out the tongue, like it would have been like just like a burst of blood just shoot out, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure.
This was very, I guess, like, you know, real in the sense of, you know, like what would happen if you were to
you saw the blood come out.
Yeah. But this is when a nun stumbles across Cecilia. Not really stumbles across her, actually like just pulls her back, covers her mouth, because it looked like Cecilia was about to scream. And if she screamed, who knows what would have happened. She probably would have got locked up a lot sooner.
Yeah.
So, but neither here nor there, jumped a little ahead with that. But regardless, the nun is talking to her, and Cecilia begs to be let go, but the nun eventually says to her after the little conversation that she will never leave here.
And mind you, this nun is one of the older nuns that Cecilia has been taking care of alongside with Gwen. So we've come to really learn more about her as time has passed.
I think we forgot to bring up that when she puts her to bed earlier in the movie, doesn't she see her feet and they have crosses on them?
She notices the crosses on the bottom of her feet, which is insane. But essentially, going back to the point that we were at, this is the first time that we hear this elder sister speak English, and she literally says, "You will not escape now. You'll never escape."
And that pretty much fucks with Cecilia, because she's like, I think she can. She's looking in her eyes and she believes her. She knows she's never going to be able to leave here.
Yeah.
And that's when the scene cuts to the morning. There's screams happening. At first, I actually thought it was going to be Gwen screaming. I don't know why I thought that, but the more
I thought so too.
The more I listened to it, I could tell it wasn't her voice. But eventually, everyone comes running into the room. Both Mother Superior and the father. I think one of the father's like dudes that like follows around him and shit like that. Like a little lapdog. They all come running in. They see Cecilia just with blood everywhere. And of course, they all have to agree that she has to go to the hospital because they're afraid that the baby might have died.
The miracle is what they're calling it.
The miracle.
Anyway, so it said like
I was gonna make a joke. Miracle on.
I figured that's why I just kind of said
666th Street.
That's why I said anyway. This is when the scene cuts and like Cecilia's being carried into a car, and all of a sudden, she's still screaming, she's still covered in blood. I was kind of being sold that she had the miscarriage, especially with the way that they were panning things out. But the Mother Superior, being the Mother Superior that she is there on the bed, like crying. There's this really weird scene where she's actually rubbing the bloody sheets all over her face, which I think is the reason why she stumbles across the feather to begin with.
Yeah.
But eventually, because she's fucking around with that shit, it's nasty as fuck. Anyway, she looks down and she finds the feather. She shuffles through all the rest of the sheets, finds the chicken head, finds the chicken body, calls the father, tells her everything. And mind you, Cecilia is still in the car screaming. So me as an audience member, I'm feeling awkward for Cecilia because I know what's happened. However, she hasn't. The father is looking at her, looking more and more menacing. The car finally stops. Cecilia starts putting two and two together, asking why are they stopping, and then scene suddenly cuts to her out on the field running, screaming, and it seems like she has a decent start, but then you have the two men run up behind her.
I actually thought that
and
scene
grab her.
I thought that scene was actually pretty funny when it cut, like it zoomed in on her screaming, then it cuts to her running.
Yeah.
Just the way that was edited, it seemed very like almost Ed and Eddie like to me.
Yeah.
Very funny. I don't think it was supposed to be funny, but it was.
No, it definitely was. The scene cuts, and then you have Cecilia, who is literally strapped in a wheelchair, is truly and fully being introduced to Tadashi, or the father.
This is probably where you get the most First Omen like scene with the whole trials and different people that they were trying to, I guess, impregnate or something.
Because he essentially reveals that he's been trying to impregnate nuns for the last few years, using the DNA samples that they found on the Holy Nail. All of his attempts has failed, and he literally has these failed attempts in like jars and on display. And the only one that seemed to have not failed was Cecilia. And he is just weird. It has this almost like American Horror Story vibe, like you mentioned. But by the end of this exchange, she's taken into this room, and you have the father, and who you called the father's lapdog, standing there. And he seems to be saying the same line that the rest of these higher-ups are saying all the time. And I think it's like, the meek shall inherit the earth.
I have no idea. I wasn't looking at
I have it written down. Funny enough. I'll find it later. Anyway, they seem to be repeating the same line that's drawn off of the Bible, but he pulls out this brand, and the lapdog is holding out Cecilia's foot, and lo and behold, we come to find out what that cross scar on the nun's feet really are for. Because right before he brands it, he says, "And now you'll never leave, you'll remember." Or something along those lines.
So now we know that they've been performing experiments
for a long time.
Which is interesting, because he doesn't look that old.
No, but he probably took on the role of like somebody prior to him.
Maybe, yeah. Because even though it's kind of revealed that it seems like he's the one who brought these ideas to them.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, but...
There's a lot of duality in there.
Yeah, because that nun that looks very old.
Yeah,
so.
She does. And who knows, maybe it's one of those rare cases where she goes through a lot of shit and ends up aging, but really isn't, type of deal. But that's also like 1 in a million. So
yeah,
I'm also giving a little bit more credit to the writing than what it should be, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I'm not trying to... I was making just to see like maybe I missed something, but regardless, he does mention that it's like him specifically who got banned for performing these experiments. So he came here, and that's where they were able to find salvation, where he was able to do his experiments, and they could have their miracle be born. Yeah. So they kind of got a twofer out of that. But
yeah, I
think
even Cecilia makes a remark and says like, "Oh, he's playing God," and he's like, "No, I'm not playing God. I'm just fulfilling his duties."
She is then left in a room after being branded, and the scene cuts to her confessing to her sins. I believe it's the same cardinal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's confessing, and while she's confessing, she's actually taking apart her nails, which that in and of itself is always gross to me, no matter what movie it is, especially when they show it in that detail. Because
it was stringy. Like she actually lifted it up. You could tell the nail was dead. Like, I know they were really emphasizing on the fact that her rotting from the inside out meant that there's something really wrong going on here. Which kind of bleeds into her looking at the cardinal and saying like what they're doing is really not God's work. And his response, which I thought was pretty stupid, was, "Well, then why hasn't he stopped us?"
And it's like, you could tell him, I mean, he has stopped you. All of the dead experiments downstairs are him stopping you. But
yeah.
I mean, she was also putting her hands on ice at the age of 13, so she's not too bright. So, anyway, so then Cecilia is brought to a room with an ultrasound machine, and everyone is surrounding her, saying she's due any day now. Everyone is tending to her, and you can visibly see that she's pissed off. But still, kind of a look in her eye that maybe she knows something that we don't. So I thought that was pretty interesting. At this point in the movie, everyone has been saying the same, like, oh, here you go.
The same line. "Blessed be the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And they're constantly saying it to her before they do some, like, raunchy ass shit. So, by all means, this line has become annoying. No more. Nope. If you come to me and you say that line, I will punch you in the face. Disclaimer right now.
Cecilia tries another escape by getting a decorative cross and bashing the Mother Superior's head with it. And this is the same girl who was rubbing the sheets all over her, right?
Yep.
I'm happy she got her head bashed in, bro. Mm-hmm. I'm still happy.
It was fucking nasty.
But yeah, she beats her the fuck down with that cross. It was very vivid, very long, well-deserved in my opinion.
I liked it.
She leaves the room, but her water breaks, making it the worst time ever for all this to happen. She then uses a rosary to kill another high-up, and I believe that's the cardinal, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, he's actually lighting a cigarette while all the nuns downstairs are, like, singing.
Also, real quick before we jump on, this same dude who had that line about why hasn't God stopped us, that's also like a very stupid line in the sense that usually only villains say that line. And I don't know if these guys see themselves as villains. They don't seem to think that way. They don't think they're bringing the Antichrist like in First Omen. So, because you only hear that line like an example in like the Iceman, that mafia Irish hitman killer, like him telling them like, you know, I'm performing a hit, I'm doing the work. Like if God's real, he'll come down and strike me. Like you don't say that unless like you're a villain, right? So it's like very interesting that he said that. Again, dumb, but either way, he gets offed right here, so cool.
And it was a nice kill too. Like Cecilia's like digging the rosary into the cardinal's neck. You can see the blood actually coming out because the bees and the string is like digging into his throat. He's also being choked out, so like eventually he just kind of dies, but right before he dies, you hear this little gasp in the camera panels to the hallway. And come to find out, it's the doctor. And the doctor is just kind of like, Cecilia, what have you done? Oh my goodness. And just trots off. Mind you, before this whole scene with the cardinal being killed, we can tell that Cecilia more likely than not is going into labor because she's like crouching over, holding her stomach, and whenever she's running after the doctor, she's doing the same thing.
She's killing everyone though, one by one.
I know, she's battling all these higher ups, these like fucking snooty ass, nose in the air, while about to give birth. So like you can tell survival is on high. Scene cuts to her like going through the same laboratory, if you will, and all of a sudden she has like
laboratory.
I don't know what to call it.
Oh, it's just
has
funny.
Lighter fluid in her hand and is pouring it everywhere. She has the match or the lighter that the cardinal had, by the way, and is. You can put two and two together as a viewer and tell that she's probably going to burn down the place. And this is where
she gets into like an altercation with Tedeschi or the father.
Yep.
And then she's able to outsmart him and locks him in the room and then sets the place on fire. Now, I made this joke to you. Anyone who's been at a barbecue knows what it's like when you have fire, like real charcoal fire. It doesn't go out on its own unless you put it out. It can stay on for hours.
Yep.
There was tons of charcoal in that room. We know what they were using it for. But there's tons of charcoal in that room.
Yep.
She's set lighter fluid everywhere. Paperwork, books, everything that you think that would catch fire is in that room with charcoal. That shit should have burned for who knows how long. But yet he's able to put it out somehow very quickly, it seems, while we hear
Mind
him
you, the
screaming.
fires were licking up against the door and you could see the smoke coming out.
And he was screaming for his life. So he somehow found a way to put the fire out, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
You called it plot armor. So we thought he burned to death, but he didn't. He literally breaks the door down like he's Jason Voorhees. He ends up...
Which he couldn't do before.
Maybe he got a power up, bro. Who knows?
Will the fire unlock something in him?
We get this interesting scene where Cecilia kind of goes down to the tombs. He starts chasing her. Very like Scooby-Doo-esque chase back and forth, right?
She comes across a few dead bodies.
Yeah, she comes across a few dead bodies. Finally, as she sees like a bright light, you think she's gonna make it out, but then Tedeschi pulls her back in, and he begins, I guess,
cutting her open
by, I forget what verse he's saying, but he's cutting like
it's
her.
The same verse that has been said throughout the entire fucking film. Blessed be those who are meek, and they shall inherit the earth.
So he cuts her open. He's about to perform the.
He cuts into her with a scalpel, but it's almost like a giant ass C-section. It's not like too thorough of a cut to where it's deep enough, but you can tell he's probably planning on ripping her stomach open and not having her survive because it wasn't a clean cut either. And that's when we find out that Cecilia still had the decorative cross real close by, and
it's a nail.
Nail? Oh, it was the nail. It was the holy nail.
Yeah.
It was the holy nail that she grabs and stabs him in the neck and like does this cool thing of like pulling it forward, just like how I thought they would do in Scream 6.
Yeah.
But
Which
they put it in this film. I thought that was a decent kill.
Decent kill, but I mean, her hand was on that nail the entire time.
Yeah,
so.
she could have done it sooner before he actually went and did a whole fucking U across her stomach, but neither here nor there.
Again, not that bright, bro. She was putting her hands on.
She could have also grabbed the scalpel for later, because when she finally killed him, scene cuts to her holding onto a tree trying to give birth. And this is the first time in a long time, Mario, where I actually felt sick to my stomach. When she gives birth, you hear this like plopping sound on the ground and this like raspy breathing and this coughing. She fucking bites through her own umbilical cord to cut the tie with the kid.
I thought that was interesting.
My stomach actually heaved. I was nope. No. Just no.
I figured, and I hate to compare it, but a very similar scene happened in First Omen, and I thought it was done better there. But you're not wrong in the sense where she cut the biblical cord with her mouth. I thought that was a pretty cool, I guess, add to it.
Yeah.
But again, just I don't know. Not the biggest fan of the actress. I actually kind of found myself kind of turning down the volumes. I really didn't want to like hear her scream. So
yeah, I noticed.
It might just be like my own,
mindset or
vibe and mindset with the actress. But regardless of all that, very interesting scene. So we can presume that whatever this baby was born as was disfigured and or looked like a beast, I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably an actual abomination.
So would Tedeschi had seen that as another failure then?
We don't know. That's the question that lies in there.
Because the ones in the jar also look kind of fucked up too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold you. So
because we don't see this kid. It's whenever Cecilia steps away to grab a stone, that we later on come to find out it's an actual stone. There's this like weird dark figure in the grass on the ground. So she picks up this heavy ass stone and then she goes to where she gave birth, lifts the stone over her head, screams one more time, and then drops it down, and we hear this squelching noise. So obviously she killed her newborn.
I would probably have to say it probably was like a beast, if you will, because she saw the disfigured failures in the laboratory.
Mm-hmm. And this thing didn't cry. It was rasping. It was coughing. It was breathing.
I feel like even if... I know she was in a killing mode, but I feel like if it was just like a regular baby but just a little disfigured, she would have either kept it or just left it there. But the fact that she actually went out of her way to kill it, we're supposed to feel some justification in her killing this thing.
Mm-hmm. So either that or you could villainize her for it, one or the other.
One or the other. But that was Immaculate. I give it like a 5.5 out of 10.
I would say like 6, maybe a 7 on a good day.
Interesting because they didn't bring in that much money for the box office in the U.S. And frankly, a lot of movies haven't. Night Swim is actually the highest grossing U.S. box office film.
That's hilarious.
That horror film, bro. That's hilarious, man.
I don't know. I mean, I thought it would be better, especially with the hype that I heard, but I can't really be too upset either. At the same time, it's not like I didn't find myself not watching it. I did watch it. Were there moments where I broke away to do things? Yeah, but I mean, I do that a lot of the times. Recently, I've noticed it's very difficult for me to sit still whenever a movie's playing. So
you have to be really invested.
Yeah, either that or I need to really like the story. So I guess that's a tell right there.
Yeah, but let us know what you think of Immaculate. Very interesting film overall. I don't know if I'm gonna go back and rewatch it. Probably not.
Probably not anytime soon. Maybe within like 5 years or so.
5 years is wild.
If I'm alive, I'll do it again before 2030. I'll be like, all right, let me just.
But let us know what you thought of Immaculate. Also, what other horror movies you want to check out. I'll leave a poll down below, and you can let us know which ones you'd be more interested in us reviewing. We're probably gonna take a little break after the next episode when it comes to doing full-on movie reviews. I think we're gonna jump over to do some interesting stuff for season 3, like
very similar to our season debuts.
Yeah, more supernatural horror stories. I'm looking for guests who've actually had some supernatural experiences, so we can bring them on as well. So, gonna be a very fun season 3. But let us know what you think overall on Immaculate, and go follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Go check out our website where you can find all the links to our episodes. Thank you again for joining and listening as always.
Bye.